Thanks for everyone's patience. Feel free to put on your cameras if you like, but obviously we all go through Zoom fatigue. It is a Tuesday and it is 5 o'clock, at least where I'm at. And so kind of as you guys trickle in, welcome and thank you for joining us today. We will be diving into the summer 2022 NPS BPI internship. And before doing so, I'd love to just introduce you guys to who I am. My name is Nicolette Cabell, and I currently serve as the Program Recruitment and Inclusion Manager here at the Purposeful Growth Institute, aka PGI. I promise you don't have to keep saying Purposeful Growth Institute. Feel free to say PGI. It's shorter, it's easier. And so I will serve as your go-to resource for anything related to the NPS BPI internship. And so welcome. We do have a really big group here, and we have two alum that, from the last cohort that will be conducting a fireside chat. But before we do, just going to give a quick overview in terms of what you guys can expect today. And so I will introduce you guys to who PGI is. I want you guys to walk away knowing who we are and how we partner with the National Park Service. They do serve as one of our longest standing partners, and they are a high impact organization. And then we will hop into the more juicier topic, obviously, the fireside chat with our two alum. And so in PGI tradition, kind of before we get started, we do like to have a moment of mindfulness. And this is just typically some sort of meditation or a point of reflection. We are all human beings. And so I don't know where you guys are all right now, but in New York, it's raining. It's a Tuesday. Everyone here is in school, most likely. Well, they should be, because it is a requirement. And so with that, there's some sort of stress probably lingering, whether that be recruitment season, whether that be family deliverables of some sort. And so I would love if everyone just took a minute, 45 seconds, and think about the one thing that you're going to do to resolve that stress for today. Just take a second before we kind of dive into the more juicier things. What will you be doing today? And if we have any brave souls, definitely feel free to put it in the chat. Nice. Someone's going to yoga. That's definitely a nice relaxation. Anyone else want to share? I know for me, I don't cook, so I will be getting Chipotle after a very long day. Awesome. Oh, nice. Going for a run. Oh, yes. On the order wave, indeed. For sure, Jim. So it's good to see that everyone is going to be doing something after this to relieve any stress that you might be feeling on a Tuesday. And so I do want you to take that and walk away with that. And so let's kind of dive in for today. So like I said, I want you guys to know who we are, the Purposeful Growth Institute. And so it's a pleasure to meet you. So PGI operates as a nonprofit corporation, and we are in close partnership with Inspiring Capital, who is our sister company. And so PGI's mission is to align professional skills and interests with high impact work. We recruit, match, engage, and develop purpose-driven professionals with values-aligned organizations. And so ultimately, with the goal to create an anti-racist, inclusive, and sustainable version of capitalism. And so many of you might have heard of Inspiring Capital, or IC for short, but Inspiring Capital is a B Corp certified for-profit that has been doing purposeful leadership development and consulting since 2012. And so IC has transitioned two well-established high-impact programs over to the Purposeful Growth Institute, which we are now taking over. And today I will be speaking about the National Parks Business Plan internship. And so this is a truly mission-driven initiative, and thus we thought it would be best that it be managed by a nonprofit, which is where the Purposeful Growth Institute comes into play. And so essentially PGI is doing similar work to what IC has done in the past, but from a better position to expand the work as a dedicated not-for-profit. And so we did inherit the National Park Service from IC, and we're working with the National Park Service for the past 5 years and plan to continue to recruit top-tier talent for their internships, because we do consider them to be a really high impact partner that's trying to use business as a force for good. Being able to have an impact at your job is something that you typically don't hear a lot or see a lot. And so let's speak to the internship a bit. So this program is a paid 11-week internship where you are paired with another co-consultant and work either in a national park or a regional office. And so with the intention to help America's national parks continue to thrive. Now, if that makes you feel excited, you're on the right track in terms of this potentially being an internship that you want to take part in. And so as a team, you work on a project and the project's focus varies depending upon clients' needs. And at the end of the program, the consultants present their analysis and strategic recommendations essentially to the National Park Service leadership, which includes internal and external stakeholders. I will let our alums speak to that later on in the session. And so typically project scopes have included improving financial sustainability through innovative commercial service offerings or achieving economies of scale through consolidated museum collections. So really an array of projects, but I will let our alums speak to that, which we'll do in a second. And so who are we looking for? We're looking for candidates that really have strong project management and analytical skills, are able to present and have interpersonal skills, as well as an enthusiasm for working in diverse and potentially remote project sites. One thing that I would like to flag that isn't on this slide is that it is a requirement for you to be a US citizen or a permanent resident, given that some of the project sites will require you to travel to different sites. So I just want to ensure that's clear. And so you can find more information about the general logistics of the internship on our YouTube channel, which is the Purposeful Growth Institute, or you can also check out our website. And so now that we kind of covered who PGI is and just our partners, the National Park Service, we're now going to go into the fireside chat, and I'm going to just stop sharing my screen. Awesome. So we have two really great alum with us here, Emily and Kelly. If you guys can just give us a quick little wave. And so essentially now what we're going to be doing is just hear from them. What was their summer like? What was behind the scenes? And so with that being said, I love for our panelists to introduce themselves. Kelly, can we start with you just in terms of who you are, what program you are, and yeah, just a little bit intro.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me know if you cannot hear me for some reason, but I'm Kelly. I am a dual degree student at Georgetown. So I'm pursuing both my master's in foreign service and also my MBA. I'm in my third and final year, as long as everything goes as planned. Thank you. Over the summer, I was working on a project for the Intermountain region of the National Park Service, which is basically just essentially the Rocky Mountains of the United States. Working on a really fascinating project that I hope I get to tell you guys more about, but we got to live in Denver for the summer. So it was great. Prior to graduate school, I was a journalist and decided to go to grad school to switch gears a little bit. And the National Park Service certainly is helping me do that.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro, Kelly. And then Emily, on over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Clayton. I'm a second year MPP student at Berkeley at the Goldman School of Public Policy, where I'm mainly focusing on climate change and environmental policy. I worked at Channel Islands this summer, which is a small national park, island park off the coast of Los Angeles area. So it's really exciting to be working on some sustainable vehicle initiatives there, and I'll talk more about that later. Prior to coming to graduate school, I was a teacher and served in the Peace Corps.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Both, as the audience can see, we really have such a diverse range of individuals that participated in this program. And so given both of your backgrounds really being diverse and different, would love to just hear what initially drew you both to the National Parks Business Plan internship. Like what drew you guys there? I see you nodding your head, Kelly, so we can start with you.
I had no idea that the National Park Service even had an internship program. And then I heard about it from Inspiring Capital when you guys were talking about some other internships. And my family's from Montana, so I'm a giant fan of Yellowstone National Park. So when I found out there was an internship, I was like, even for me, even for a business and foreign affairs student, are you sure? And started looking into it and chatting with a bunch of people about it. I recognized pretty early on that anybody I talked to about the internship who had done it, either from Georgetown or from elsewhere, I was just able to have really easy conversations with them and it became pretty clear pretty early on that I just kind of got along with the people really well. And I got some really great advice from a mentor who said, like, you know, there are a lot of internships out there where you can learn a lot of things, but if you know you're going to get along with the people, then you know that you'll absolutely learn a lot and it will be easy for you to learn a lot. And it just was clear to me that the people are really dedicated to the internship and to actually taking the time to like mentor interns and work with us on some pretty interesting stuff. So all of that made me really interested in pursuing the internship. So
awesome. And what about you, Emily?
So I think somewhat similarly to Kelly, I found out about the internship from a friend who's an alum of the program, who actually went to Georgetown as well. So shout out to Georgetown. But yeah, so I think definitely just everyone that I talked to who had done the internship, I think had a really positive experience with it. I think it's so rare to have a summer internship where you're able to really recharge while doing really purposeful work. I think a lot of just kind of debriefing with people after their internships this summer, I think a lot of people were just either had experiences where they felt like they weren't really able to contribute to a super substantive project, whereas I think other people like felt like they got a lot done but were very drained by the process. So I think just in hearing from people's experience, it was really just amazing to have kind of that work-life balance, but while still be doing really substantive work. I think as a policy student, some of my motivations were maybe slightly different. I was kind of excited to have some of the opportunity to learn from people with more of a business background, and while still being able to do work that is somewhat focused on policy implementation and kind of taking some of those big picture policy ideas and looking at what that might look like in a actual park or regional park context. So I think kind of just getting that experience from translating big picture ideas into the real world was really exciting for me.
Oh, just give me one sec. I think back someone is not on mute. Let me just mute that really quickly. Awesome, there we go. Yeah, so thank you, ladies, for kind of sharing in terms of like the context behind why you pursued the internship essentially. And I think the main theme that I sort of hear is that you're able to bring impact to work, right? And also be able to have a community of some sorts of individuals and how it can take you long-term within your career. And so a question that we get from a lot of candidates too is just what you guys spoke about a little bit is, what did your project entail? And so Emily, we can start with you.
Yeah, for sure. So my project was basically broken into three key parts. So the first was they really brought us in to understand some of the vehicle needs across the entire park. So Channel Island is spread across, I believe, 5 islands that the Park Service actually, or I'm sorry, 5 locations that the Park Service actually is maintaining. And so they had vehicles at 3 of those locations, but no one had ever really done an assessment of whether the vehicles there were meeting the needs that they had in the park. And so they had a sense and kind of an initial hypothesis that they were spending too much money on vehicles and looking for potential ways to reduce that. But at the same time, they've had, and you'll hear this across the entire Park Service, over time, staff have been kind of very winnowed down, essentially. There's very limited staffing in the park. And so the last thing they wanted to do was cut some of those resources in a way that would really hamstring the mission of the organization. So I think they brought us in to kind of initially just do an assessment of like, do we have too many vehicles? Are the vehicles aligned with needs? And while that sounds like very basic, we actually found some really interesting findings just from interviewing. I think we spoke with nearly 40 members of park staff. There were a lot of gender gaps that came up. A lot of women felt really unsafe within the park, which is a really important DEI issue across the Park Service in general. So some things there. We found a few ways to cut costs, but that was kind of the initial stage of a project. So after that, we kind of looked towards the future. Just given a lot of the policy climate right now, there's a lot of movement towards looking at electrification. And so given that the parks aren't an island, they thought there might be some potential to transition to an electric vehicle fleet so that they wouldn't have to be shipping diesel back and forth across a ship channel every couple of weeks. So we were able to give them some recommendations around what they could reasonably electrify, what kind of infrastructure would be required to do that, and just kind of some policy and market signals that they should look out for to kind of guide them in that journey. And then our last phase of the project was we built essentially just a pilot for them to be able to test that out. If they were to bring an electric vehicle online, given that it's a really rugged island environment, you don't want to make a huge investment that's not going to work. So we basically just built out a strategy that they could use to test this out before maybe bringing it to the larger park. So yeah, it was really exciting to just work through all those different phases of the project.
Thanks for that breakdown, Emily. And then Kelly.
I also just have to say, I saw some of Emily's slides and they were the most gorgeous slides that her and her partner made at the end of their project. So I just need everybody to know that. Our project was completely different, which is what makes this fun. Emily's project was specific to a park. Our project was specific to a region. So the Intermountain region, that Rocky Mountain area, has a bunch of park units in it. The National Park Service leadership and the Treasury Department is kind of pressuring or trying to move the parks away from handling as much cash as they have been handling. Reducing cash has immense operational efficiency benefits, operational safety benefits, which I could go on and on about. I had never really even considered at the fee collecting parks what it means to have to handle cash, to drive around to all the campsites, pick up the cash, bring it to headquarters, count the cash, have at least 2 people with the cash at all times, and then transport that cash to a bank. There's certainly many park units that are far from a bank. Just like the amount of time to actually deal with cash and handle it safely is incredibly taxing. And like Emily alluded to, there, you don't necessarily want have the staffing or the time for your staff to spend like a whole day just like driving cash around. However, with any effort to reduce cash or to go cashless, there are immense equity and accessibility concerns. Not everybody who visits a national park has access to a digital payment option or has a bank account. And so that was really what our project was about. Like, can we reduce cash in the parks? How do we do it? How do we do it equitably? The parks are for everybody. The National Park Service is aware that the demographics of the US don't necessarily match the demographics of the national park visitors. And they're working to fix that. And so they didn't want reducing cash. They don't want reducing cash to be an accidental barrier that they're putting up for access to their park units. So in this process, we came up with kind of a toolkit for parks in the region to use as they either reduce cash or move to cashless. So we gave them, we developed a risk register, an implementation guide, a decision tree, and a communication plan for communicating how they can reduce cash and what that might look like for them based on other parks in the region and some private sector research. I could go on forever, but I'll stop there.
No, I think something that's really interesting that you guys both bring to the table is that you deal with a real business problem. It sounds, which is something potentially not all internships are able to provide. And even hearing how you guys are assessing the issue and how like it impacted not just one stakeholder, but numerous. And so with that mindset, I would love to hear what you both would say are the most valuable skills that you gained in dealing with an actual business problem that impacts a large group of individuals / communities. Who would like to go ahead, Emily?
Yeah, I can start us off. So I think definitely one thing, if your project ends up involving working at an actual park site, I think one thing that I found really interesting and valuable was just being able to kind of tailor the pitch for the project to different stakeholders, which sounds really simple, but I think when you're talking with someone who is working on an island 8 days a week and maybe reads their email sometimes, versus like being able to translate what you're doing to like a park superintendent or a regional staff member. Being able to kind of code switch and essentially like describe a project in a way that resonates with different people, I think is a really, really valuable skill if you're interested in kind of working in a really hands-on way with people. I guess along with that, qualitative interviewing was like extremely valuable and extremely important for the project. I think I had done a lot of interviewing in the context of like school consulting projects in the past, but I think like really sitting down and like doing that for like 2 weeks solid, just back to back, just like talking with tons of different people, really made me a lot better at kind of like guiding conversations and getting what you really need from people and getting them to really talk more and share perspectives and feel comfortable in that interview and sharing space when there are contentious issues that arise. I think for me, definitely as someone, again, coming from being a teacher and being in the Peace Corps without internet, my quantitative skills were a little rusty. So that's a big part of what I've been working on at school. So definitely just getting down and dirty with Excel was a really big benefit of the project. Just really being able to like build a model from start to finish in Excel and kind of, but not only like a financial model, but make sure that it's something that's like tailored to the needs of a stakeholder who may or may not have great Excel skills. So thinking about not only how to build tools, but how to build tools that are really accessible to people who want to use them. So I think those were some of the biggest takeaways for me. Definitely got better at PowerPoint as well. Again, probably less relevant for folks with a more businessy background, but for someone who's definitely switching careers, it was extremely valuable to gain those kind of hard skills.
I think we can all say we all love Excel or need some help. So, you know, I'm echoing that. But how about you, Kelly?
Yeah, I certainly got to hang out with some pivot tables, and that was good and very, very needed for me. And I would echo Emily's point very, very loud and very loudly, that your point about being able to communicate the same information to multiple stakeholders and getting them all on the same page. We were communicating with our client, with leadership at park units, with Washington leadership, and clearly communicating the data and the narrative throughout the summer to all of the different stakeholders was more challenging than I had anticipated. Everybody has kind of a different piece of the project that they're keyed in on or that they care about, or like a different idea. And so kind of knowing like when to zoom in on those things and when to like zoom out and be like, nope, this is the kind of like overall, this is the overall picture that we're communicating. So yeah, definitely just reiterating Emily's point that learning how to clearly communicate over the course of a project to everybody involved was really a very valuable skill. And I'll also say just project management in general. Building out our like 10-week schedule and then like adjusting when needed, but kind of knowing like, okay, we're spending like these 2 weeks really diving into these interviews with these folks, and then we're kind of switching over here. And then we're visiting this park, and then at this point we'll have like this amount of data so we can do this, but we can't do that. Like just building out the actual like each week of the project. What I hadn't fully appreciated going into the internship was that like that was completely within our control. Like me and my co-consultant Joseph, like we really got to take the lead on that and have full ownership over that. And again, maybe there are other folks who kind of have already had that experience, but that was really awesome. Just kind of like thrown in and like, you do it, you reach out to people, like you make it happen. And that was awesome.
Awesome. Thank you to you both. It sounds like you both did a lot. You learned a lot. And so with that, my question for you both is, what does a day look like? Is there a typical day? Who would like to start us off?
I can start us off. Typical day so we were working for the regional office in Denver. And so we were housed at the Homewood Suites, the extended stay Homewood Suites in Denver, which was really fun. There were 4 of us living there for the summer. And I think that's like a little bit different than where people live when they're at the parks. But we would wake up and meet in our living room, AKA the lobby of the hotel, and make sure we had our caffeine. And me and my co-consultant would always touch base in the morning, then probably do some interviews, probably like at least 2 a day, at least, and then connect with our project champion or our project client to assess where we were, make sure we were communicating what needed to be communicated, and it wasn't just sitting with the 2 of us, and making sure that we were communicating that out, adjusting if anything was needed, following up with people. And then what was really great about living in Denver is that after work, we could either drive like 15 minutes east and hit up a brewery, or we could drive 15 minutes west and check out some of the awesome hikes that were really, really accessible to us. My co-consultant would often after work, he would go on bike rides. So that was really great. We were just kind of like could always be doing something outside every day. And then if I wanted a little like taste of the city, I could also do that. So that was like the best of both worlds.
And how about you, Emily?
I think somewhat similarly to Kelly, I wasn't living in the park. I was staying with my co-consultant in a town nearby. So we were just living in a house for the summer, which was kind of fun. I hadn't had a roommate in a while, so it's good for me to dust off those skills again. But yeah, so our project kind of ranged throughout the summer. I think part of that was partly due to just the emergence of the Delta variant halfway through. So for the beginning of the summer, we were in the office, which was really nice. Just having a lot more opportunities to casually interact with staff members. And we really were able to luckily front load a ton of our interviewing and data gathering during some of those initial stages of the project. We ended up working from home for the second half of the summer, which changed our flow a little bit, but I think it was still great to be able to talk with staff from across the park, even though we were remote for the second half of the summer. I think you're able to have as much like work-life balance as you want to with the internship. I think like if you want to try and keep things to like a very 9 to 5, you totally can. Andrew and I, the other co-consultant, we just got like way too obsessed with our project. And I feel like there were a lot of days we were just like working too much on it. But it was really just from a place of like both of us really being excited to like learn a ton about electric vehicles and some of the components like that. We were just like diving so deep. But I think we had a lot of opportunities for outdoor things as well. So we were right by the Santa Monica Mountains. So we went on a lot of hikes up there. Hopped in the ocean every once in a while. Andrew definitely learned to surf. I'm a little bit afraid of the ocean, so I didn't, but did some snorkeling this summer when we did occasional trips out to the islands, which was really fun. So yeah, it was overall just like a great mix of lots of hard work, but lots of fun play too.
Awesome. It sounds like you both were able to have a good work-life balance, which is always great to hear. I think my next question for you both is just, given what you learned and given the fact that, you know, working with different external stakeholders, how did your experience change or influence your career path and further your professional development overall? And maybe let's start with Emily.
Yeah, I can dive in. So I think for me, it just really gave me a lot of confidence that, you know, I could dive into a new project area. I think, you know, having worked in kind of one field for a long time, it was just really exciting to be able to say, like, no, in 10 weeks, like I can dive in and just learn a whole new project area and skill set and have really tangible results to show someone. So I think just like first and foremost, that confidence that comes from being able to point to a project that you're really proud of was like one of the big takeaways for me. Professionally, I think I'm still exploring a lot of different options. I'm primarily came into the internship interested in government service. I think I'm still really interested in that, particularly in the environmental space. I think I have maybe more of a realistic sense of some of the challenges involved in that, but I think overall really just consolidated a lot of my interests.
Awesome. I think I just want to add here that it's great that you got confidence. I think that's such a huge thing that a lot of like a lot of us oversee, that it's something that's really necessary, especially when you got a lot of autonomy, like to be able to do that somewhere else, wherever you may go, whether that's with the National Park Service or wherever else, you take that skill, is such a hard skill that not a lot of people are, have the ability to do or really get that sense from an internship. So I'm glad to hear that. Go ahead, Kelly.
I would 100% agree with that. And I also was just grateful to get a little bit of a sense of what it is like to do public sector work. I didn't have that experience before, and have had so many people, especially in business school, tell me like, "Oh, the government's just too slow." So it was good to kind of get some exposure to that myself, within the National Park Service. And certainly confidence in project management. I would say the influence that the internship has had on my career plans overall. Number one, I was not considering applying to a position at the National Park Service prior to this summer. I am studying business and foreign affairs. I have always wanted to work internationally in some capacity. But I am now most certainly going to be applying for a position at the National Park Service. I ended up meeting a lot of people who actually come from the international, like international affairs or international relations background, who now work at the Park Service. So that's kind of an exciting thing for me. A second thing I'd like to point out is I think for some people, a big draw of the internship is that it is a consulting project. That wasn't like the primary draw for me, because I am not necessarily pursuing a consulting career. However, I am so grateful that I was a consultant for the summer. It was an incredible experience. I think I have a much better understanding of consulting and the nuances and the benefits and drawbacks of it now from that. Much more interested in working on projects like that again in the future. And then the third and final point I'll make, the influence that it had on me is certainly is driving me to be much more intentional about pursuing jobs that have like an environmental or sustainable focus to them. I think that was a maybe for me before, and now it's like an absolute. And that's both because of the work that I was doing, but also just because of the people that I got to meet and spend time with over the summer.
Awesome. Kelly, I'm really glad you were able to get that clarity, which I think is something that a lot of people search for, especially with internships. So I'm really glad that opened that up for you. And so I think before we kind of open it up for the audience to ask any questions, the dying question I have for you both is, we do have prospective candidates. The application is now live. Thinking back a year ago, when potentially you were sitting in their seats, what gems or what advice would you give to these individuals as they go into the application cycle? Go ahead, Emily.
I think this is, just general good advice for jobs in general, but I think specifically for this internship, it's just so important to be authentic and be realistic about why this appeals to you. I think you're going to spend so much time like being really like in depth in the field with stakeholders, and so I think your motivations for this work to come through in your application. I think just having that pretty clear in mind will really help guide you. So yeah, I think that's definitely advice I would give. Definitely, I would say as well, like reach out. So many of the alums that I talked to of the program were just so willing to give their time and share perspectives. So I think that's really valuable. And I guess the third thing I would say as well is, don't be intimidated by the case interviews, but definitely spend time preparing if you're not familiar with it. It's just, I think, a really good skill to develop, just that kind of like thinking on the fly and all those elements. But with a little preparation, even if you're not familiar with it, you'll be able to exceed in it.
I agree with all of that, and I would say certainly prepare for the case interview. but keep in mind that I think part of what the National Park Service is looking for is not that you like know everything already, and not that you know everything about how the Park Service functions already, or that you know everything about consulting already, but that you are like willing to learn, and you're willing to figure that out, and have some humility, and like be willing to really learn like from the folks at the Park Service who would be your project clients. So I think, you know, if you're able to, if that's true for you, then being able to display that through the interview process, I think is a great thing to share. But Nicolette, you can tell me if I'm wrong, if that's not what the National Park Service is looking for.
No, I can echo that. I'm echoing what both of these ladies say, and that I think something that I'm sure the audience can tell is that these women are authentic and they had a purpose. And so they wanted to make an impact. And I think that's something the National Park Service really, really appreciates with their consultants and individuals that truly want to do impactful work. You're dealing with real business issues, as these ladies have told all of you, that really impact not just like the park, but also external stakeholders. And that's why a big piece of the application too is understanding not only the project management, but you're going to be by yourself. You're going to be with your co-consultant, a lot of autonomy. And so being actually okay with that, you need to ask yourself, like, would you be okay with that? Like, although it sounds amazing to be on a park and all these other things, as they also said, they didn't exactly live on a park. So like just thinking about all those external factors is something that you should also be asking yourself, and just being true to when you actually submit the application. And so with that being said, I'm going to stop talking. And so now I'd love to open up the room just for anyone who potentially has a question for the panelists or for myself in terms around the internship or anything that they shared. I think there is a large group of us, so feel free to like raise your hand and then we could just take each question by question. Awesome. I saw a hand raised by April.
Hey everyone, thanks for your time tonight. Emily, you mentioned that there's been significant staffing cuts across the parks, and so I was just wondering if each of you could talk about the personnel support that you had in each of your projects and what that looked like, and if that was ever a challenge for you.
Yeah, so they go into a lot of this during training and things like that. Basically, park funding has stayed pretty stable over the years, which means that just with inflation, a lot of staff are being lost over time. That being said, I think it didn't really impact like the day-to-day of our projects. We actually had a ton of accessibility from staff. We had meetings with the superintendent every week, which is not really true, I would say, for most projects. I think having that level of support from senior staff is not always there, depending on the project. But yeah, we had tons of time from the superintendent, from the park planner, who's basically the person working on strategic planning for the park. So we were really able to get a lot of face time with that and with staff. I think a lot of the ways it manifested was just in the sense of needing to be really compassionate to staff. I think a lot of them are under understandable stress, as within any institution when there's challenges with staffing. So I think just being compassionate, being respectful of people's time. Sometimes it even looked like, hey, I know you're going to be working on this thing, but can I just like shadow you and see what you're doing? Like, let's chat while you're doing XYZ thing. So I think just, you know, as with anything, just being respectful of people's time, being there to listen, and just being compassionate about how any changes you might be proposing with the project are going to impact someone's day-to-day life.
For our project, I felt like it really made, like, people really wanted to give us time, because they were like, if we don't have to deal with cash, like, we will have more time. Like, we are excited to talk to you about this. We like want to help you figure this out, which was great. And I would just say, like, I almost like held back too much at the beginning. Like, I didn't want to reach out to our basically our supervisor from the business management group, our supervisor. I was like, well, she's probably got like a lot. I'm not gonna, you know, we got this. And I think I held back a little bit too much, and then realized by week 2 that like we could totally run stuff by her anytime. Just send her a message on Teams, and she was always had an answer for us, and somebody else that we could ask if she didn't have the answer. And it was like, I mean, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. It was like the willingness of the BMG to kind of make time for us, and before any presentation, we had like at least 2 people from the business management group like listen to us do a run through and give us like really substantial feedback on like not only like how we presented, but on the slides and on the narrative overall. So that was like, yeah, there is certainly so much support, especially from like the business management group and kind of that like management level. And then when we were working with people who are in the parks or on the ground, is when we were really kind of needing to like be a little bit more respectful of their time and like know that that we needed to like end the meetings like when we said, or end the interviews when we said that we would. But everybody was always, you know, very like excited to actually work with us, which is really nice because these interns come in every summer, and I have to thank everybody who's done the internship before, because clearly they've done something right. Like the folks in the parks were always like very willing to take the time to talk to us and knew that the project could like have some impact and some benefit for them. So really like took the time for us.
That's great. Thank you.
Awesome. We have a few questions lined up. I think Camille, is it Camille?
Yes, Camille.
Okay, awesome. Go ahead. You can ask your question.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Kelly. I was wondering how you got staffed on your projects.
I can talk through a little bit about that. So I think, I forget the exact timeline, but basically once you're accepted to the project, I think during the interview process, they kind of run some different potential projects by you just to see like what might be interesting to you, just to gauge like what kind of project in general are you interested in? Are you interested in a project more like Kelly's, where you're working kind of with national level stakeholders, or you may be interested in being able to have like an impact on one specific park? And just like in general, what kind of topics are interesting to you? So I think we accepted the internship without knowing exactly what we'd be staffed to, but having some context of what some of those options might be. And so then, Kelly, I'm gonna let you fill in the rest of the timeline, or Nicolette, because I forget the rest of how it went. Sorry.
once we accepted the internship, we received like these short descriptions of what each of the projects were that had been there's kind of like a parallel timeline, right? Like they're selecting us and they're like selecting the projects and kind of like whittling it down to which projects they think are like going to be appropriate. And then there's an opportunity for everybody who is then committed to the internship to rank which ones we would be interested in. And so we can share kind of like if we have like there was like a guy last summer, I guess, who had like, you know, he was getting married. So he was like, I kind of like need to be like near an airport. So you can share kind of like location matters how that matters to you. And then what you would bring to those projects and what you would learn from that project. And those are kind of like the 3 key pieces of information that you can share when you're ranking which ones you would be interested in. They told us that most people get like one of their top 4 choices, and they're pretty sure that like it always works out pretty well. At least everybody I talked to, it worked out really well. Magically, I guess. I don't know how you guys do that behind the scenes, how you end up pairing us, but it worked out really, really well.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. I think people are coming at it with very different wants and needs. So I think almost everyone ended up getting their top choice or second choice. I think just, yeah, because people are optimizing for different things, it tends to work out.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to kind of like echo what these ladies said in terms of like the matching process, you can accept the internship, but you may not know which exact project you will be staffed on. And it's really essentially due to what the client's need is at the time, to be honest. And then on top of that, you may think you want to be like at a certain location because it sounds great, but also trying to align what skills you actually bring to the table and what you see in your career path is really how they try to do the matching process on the back end to just provide some clarity there.
I will say it was like a little bit nerve-wracking being like, yep, I'm going to do this. Don't know where I'm going to be, but let's go for it.
Yeah, a bit of ambiguity, to be honest. But however, they do base it on your matches, like what you guys want, where you want to go. And then we have Sawyer up next.
Thanks both for sharing your experiences. Emily, this is based on your experience, but we'd love to hear both of your perspectives. I imagine the Channel Islands, you talked about gathering information the first couple of weeks, but I imagine data availability is pretty limited. So I'd love to hear your approach when trying to gather that data in the first few weeks and how it dictated the rest of your internship.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely if you're doing a project that's at an individual level park, but I think honestly for almost any project in the public sector, data is a challenge. Certainly, I think our park really took it to an extreme just because like there's no internet at certain spots on the islands. And so a lot of things were in paper logs. So there were a couple weeks where we were trying to literally hunt down or get someone to take pictures of something or like put a log on a boat to get it back and forth to us. So I might be kind of an outlier on this question, to be honest, just because our project was a little extreme in that regard. But I think it was definitely somewhat of a tango of like, again, just trying to be pushy enough to get what you need in time to meet some of those deadlines that Kelly was talking about of like, nope, we're only here for 10 weeks. We really need to have all of our data in place by this midterm presentation that we're doing in our 5th week. Like we actually need this now. So I think it was like a combination of trying to be, I don't want to use the word pushy, but just assertive enough to explain why it was important and trying to get people's buy-in and like explain like how this was important to them. And also just trying to support them. Was there something we could do to really, you know, streamline things? Like if they weren't going to be able to get it to us in time because there's a question of like entering data themselves, like there were times that we just needed to do some data entry or little things like that just to move things along. But I think just in general, the more people can, I think the more you can communicate like what you're looking for from the beginning really specifically was helpful, because a lot of times people would be like, oh, this data source doesn't exist, and then, you know, like a week later you'd find out that it actually did. So just yeah, definitely a challenge in almost any project, but an interesting one for sure.
Awesome. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Our pleasure. And then we have up next, Allie.
Hey, thanks for speaking to us today. My question is more around the, I guess, interview process, recruiting process. Both of you mentioned speaking to people who had done the program before. My question is like, what is the best way to reach those people? And also, right now I'm also looking into, you know, consulting in general, and they put a huge emphasis on this networking. How important is that to this process?
I'm trying to remember how I initially found. I honestly think maybe somebody in like our career office told me about like the last person from Georgetown who had done the internship, and once I talked to him, he connected me to somebody else, and then I realized I knew somebody else from my network had put something on their LinkedIn about the National Park Service. So it was kind of just like one person led me to another. And once I actually had received an offer for the internship, I requested to speak with people who had done it previously, and Sarah Daniels, who works with Nicolette, sent me the names and connected me to 2 other people who had already done it. So that was really great. For me, the networking piece, I'm not sure played into the actual application process, but for me was immensely helpful, just to get a better sense of the internship and what it looks like, and what kind of skills I could bring to it and get and learn from it. That was just like clarified mostly for me by talking to those folks. I'll also just like make a little point here that what I think is really cool and that I'm really appreciating a lot now after the internship is that people who've done the internship have gone on to do a ton of different different jobs. So now I know people who are working at some big consulting firms, and people who are working in sustainability jobs, people who are working at the National Park Service, and now I am able to connect with all of those people after the internship, which is really great. And I think really, really neat that some people are just like the diversity of jobs that people do afterwards.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think, yeah, LinkedIn is probably your best bet for trying to connect with people. I think there's a lot of folks have a pretty good presence with that on there. It's probably a good way to look for folks. I think in terms of similar to Kelly, I don't know how much of a difference it made, but I think it really approached some of the way that I prepared for some of the case interviews. I think so many of the case interview things you'll find are not really, they're tailored to standard consulting projects and not thinking specifically through that sustainability lens. So I think talking with alums really informed the way I maybe approach some of those case interviews, at least in the initial stages. And likewise, it's just been fascinating to see the trajectory that people have taken after this role. So it's really neat.
Thank you both. I actually love what to just happen here as well. And so I think in terms of like networking, obviously you guys can speak to as many alum as you want to. However, like your application is really what the piece of, information. And when you do the case interview and things of that nature, who you are as an individual will really be like, what is the thing they focus on? I think if you are looking to connect with other individuals, I'm going to just drop my email in there. We do have alum on standby who, if you are interested in speaking to, just to learn more one-on-one about the program itself and want to hear what other alumni did this past summer, happy to connect you guys with that. And then the second piece, which was already echoed here, LinkedIn, definitely best friend, be besties. If you guys go to National Park Service, a lot of our alum, as you guys can see, they're really friendly. So if you were to send them a LinkedIn request, I'm like 99.999% sure that they would reach out to you guys and really speak to you. And we also have them dropping down their email. So obviously you guys attended this session, feel free to reach out to them. They really are great people and will make time for you. And so just like echoing that. We are almost coming at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And so I just want to quickly check in to see if anyone else had any other potential questions that you would like to ask our panelists before we kind of end this session. Awesome, doing a quick glance. Cool, that means we are all set. I'm just gonna share my screen really quick just to give you guys a few updates and some information. So like we were saying before, the application is now live. And if you feel like I am ready to apply, this is all I needed, it is up there for you. However, if you feel like, you know what, I need to speak to some more alum, they have dropped their emails. Also feel free to connect with me and I'm happy to connect you with anyone. And then secondly, we are hosting a couple other webinars where we have alumni from this past summer speaking in terms of their experience, as well as alumni who are in their careers and don't necessarily work with the National Park Service, but are working in other industries or other sectors. So please feel free to attend one of those sessions. You can access all of that information on our website at www.purposefulgrowth.org. Definitely want to encourage you guys to look on there or feel free to contact me. And so with that being said, I really just want to give a huge shout out to our alum for donating their time and really giving us their authentic perspective. I know everyone, they're still in school. And so just really grateful that they came out here to speak to all of you guys, and also thankful for you guys for attending this session. I know it's a long one, but hopefully you walk away knowing how potentially either you want to apply and the impact that you can potentially bring to the National Park Service, because we do want to continue to bring in high impact individuals. And so with that being said, I hope everybody has a great night or evening, lunch, different time zones. We got people in California and among other areas. So just enjoy the rest of your day. Make sure you do that relaxation that we talked about earlier. And so on that end, hope everyone has a great day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, Nicolette.
My pleasure. Bye, guys.
Hi, this was fun.